Does it make sense to arm the Muslim Brotherhood? Should we give Israel's enemies the firepower they need to attack and destroy our closest friend and ally? Should we give a radical government the military hardware to enforce Sharia law? Yet, that's exactly the plan. Unless you act, the United States will soon give Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood-led government 20 new state-of-the-art American-made fighter jets, the same kind of jet that American pilots fly in our own Air Force. Unless you act, we will give Egypt 200 brand new state-of-the-art main battle tanks similar to those in our own army. That's right, give. American taxpayers paid for these weapons. Our own military faces budget cuts, millions of Americans face higher taxes, record deficits cripple our economy, yet we're reinforcing the Muslim Brotherhood. For decades, the Muslim Brotherhood has inspired and supported terrorist attacks in the United States, in Israel, and around the world. The current leader of Al-Qaeda is a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood supports Hamas, the terrorist organization that attacks Israeli civilians with bombs and rockets. Since the Muslim Brotherhood gained power in Egypt, it has taken control of the military, persecuted Egyptian Christians, worked to implement Sharia law, and stood aside as rioters stormed the American embassy and tore down the American flag. We're going to give this government American weapons.
This is not getting discussed on the mainstream media. Not only are they wrong legally, but the fact that they would do this is outrageous. This is an overreaction and really nonsense. How would you react if this was your son or your daughter? It's the offense of knowing the truth. It's the offense of having an alternate worldview. Saying God bless you to someone is not a violation of the law. Hey everybody, welcome back to the broadcast. Well, this is something else. We've got Egypt about to get 20 F16's and 200 tanks thanks to you and me, the American people. Why is that, you ask? Because of a deal that was cut with Mubarak's regime 2 years ago. But you know, things have changed in Egypt, and the President of the United States doesn't even want to call Egypt an ally. Then you ask yourself, why are we arming them? Take a listen again to the President of the United States.
Would you consider the current Egyptian regime an ally of the United States?
I don't think that we would consider them an ally.
I'm joined by Than Bennett, heads up our government affairs, Skip Ash, National Security Practice Group senior counsel, and David French, who heads up our digital advocacy and is also senior counsel of the ACLJ, works on a lot of these issues. David, let me go to you first. I want to kind of go around the horn here. David, let's talk about the practicalities of this. Andy McCarthy said you've got the Muslim Brotherhood as a dedicated goal. That's not changed since their founding, which is the destruction of what they call the Zionist regime and also the complete control of Sharia application throughout the world. And people say, well, did they really say that? They actually say that in their charter. This is no great shock. So the danger here is really unprecedented. It's worse than the Shah of Iran because, as you said, we stopped funding the Shah.
Yeah, well,
after the Shah left, we stopped funding the Ayatollah.
Yeah, we stopped funding the Ayatollah. And, you know, here's the thing. We don't even have to have an unquestioned expert like Andrew McCarthy telling us what the Muslim Brotherhood is about. The Muslim Brotherhood tells us what it's about every single day. If you go to what they say in Arabic about the destruction of Israel, about the United States of America, they repeat who they are. They proclaim who they are every single day. And what's our response? Merry Christmas, Muslim Brotherhood. Here's 20 F-16s.
Yeah, and happy Hanukkah to Israel, because here's what the President of the United States is also doing. As the Jewish community celebrates Hanukkah, we did that ourselves this week. The President Obama is going to have unilateral discussions with, guess who? Iran. Who did he fail to tell? Israel. How do they find out? The newspapers. And you ask yourself, then we're doing that. We're going to have direct communications with Iran, who's, of course, they're calling for our destruction, and Israel's, the Zionist regime. We've got the money we've got the weaponry that's going to go to the Muslim Brotherhood-led government in Egypt. And I've been calling it that since the moment Morsi was elected, because, folks, that's what it is. And we just need to call it what it is. And at the same time, we've got, and I'm going to throw this one to Than. Than, we've got this kind of attitude, well, it is what it is. What do you want us to do? But now lawmakers are speaking out, finally.
Yeah, let me tell you this. If you aren't sure that a nation is your ally, I don't think sending them F-16s is what you do when you're not sure. And, Jay, I would just say this. I mean, it's the tip of the iceberg. These F-16s, they cost about $200 million. That's $200 million out of the $1.3 billion in military funding and aid that we're sending them. These members of Congress, led by Vern Buchanan, they are absolutely right. Let's hope they get the president's attention on this.
All right, let's go to Gordon. He's calling from Texas on line 5. Hi, Gordon. Welcome to the broadcast. You're on the air.
Yes, sir. I used to fly the F-111 back in Desert Storm 1.
Yes, sir. Appreciate your service.
My entire family's been involved in the Defense Department and so forth. I'd just like to comment that it's wrong, of course, to to arm our enemies. And we are at war with the Muslims. I know some people say we're not, but we are.
We're certainly at war with radical Islamists that want to destroy Western civilization as we know it. That is, I think, a clear and precise statement. And we appreciate your service to our country. You're a pilot. I'm running really tight on time here, Gordon. Let me ask you this. You know the firepower of this weaponry. How significant is it?
The F-16 they get will be toned down. Of course, it can't defeat ours, but it's still a mighty weapon.
How would it be against Israel? Pretty strong?
It's a mighty weapon.
Mighty weapon. Well, there you have it, folks. Hey, Gordon, again, we appreciate your service to our country, and we're getting reports, actually, Gordon, that it is the top of the line. They're getting the highest caliber F-16 that's available. Folks, you go to your phones right now to speak out against this. You do so by going to aclj.org or calling us at 877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or aclj.org. Let me play for you again President Obama talking about Egypt.
Would you consider the current Egyptian regime an ally of the United States?
I don't think that we would consider them an ally.
Then don't give them weapons. 877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255 or aclj.org.
It doesn't make sense. The U.S. is using taxpayer funds to put deadly weapons into the hands of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood, a radical Islamic group that controls the government there. There are new reports that the United States is spending more than $200 million of taxpayer dollars to send 20 F-16 fighter jets to Egypt, putting them into the hands of the radical Muslim Brotherhood. Another Sharia dictatorship on Israel's border, armed with American weapons, cannot be allowed to happen. Stand with the ACLJ. Demand President Obama suspend all aid to Egypt and the Muslim Brotherhood. Stop delivery of the F-16s. Cut it off until Congress can clarify that such aid will benefit the national security interests of the U.S. and Israel. Stop funding the terrorists. Call now. Add your name to our petition, and if you make a gift supporting the work of the ACLJ, your gift will be doubled through our matching challenge. Call now, 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or online, aclj.org.
Welcome back to the broadcast, everyone. They shop from a list here. We give them a shopping list. And by the way, the last caller flew in Desert Storm, and he said he didn't think this was going to be the highest grade F-16. Well, actually it is. The F-16 can fly more than 500 miles, deliver its weapons with superior accuracy, defend itself against enemy aircraft, and return to its starting point. And all-weather capabilities allows it to accurately deliver ordnance during non-visual bombing conditions, according to the U.S. Air Force. And that's the aircraft we're going to give to the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, they shop off a list, and Will Haynes said during the break, they get this list. So the list from Mubarak was 200 tanks and 20 of these aircraft. And, of course, he was an ally of ours trying to keep stability in the region. That made sense. Well, now the Muslim Brotherhood's in control of the list. So that and then, if I'm correct, that was 2 years ago's shopping list, correct?
That was correct. 2010, Hosni Mubarak made this order.
Okay, so that was the 2010 shopping list. So what are we going to do? Put on Morsi's shopping list nuclear weapons? And he'll say, yeah, I'll take 10 of those. I mean, this is how absurd that. Why are we letting the Muslim Brotherhood get a control of any of this? It makes absolutely zero sense. Michael Rubin from the American Enterprise Institute talked about this on Fox Business. Take a listen.
It is absolutely bizarre, and it's inexcusable. It goes beyond just Egypt's links to Hamas. Egypt has been actively flirting with not only Hezbollah, but with the Islamic Republic of Iran. So we really need to ask ourselves, do we really trust the Egyptian regime not to share this technology with our worst enemies?
And that takes it a step further, where it can go from here.
Well, that's exactly right. This whole idea of sharing technology, we normally share our weapons and use our weapons with the proviso that they not be shared or given or transferred to anyone else. And he's exactly right. That speaker was exactly right. There's a lot of hanky-panky going on between the Egyptians and the Iranians and others in the region, and even the Chinese and the Russians are having relations and talking, and some of our technology could be transferred very easily to those who oppose us in the Middle East.
Yeah, David, does really present. I mean, you talk about a logistical problem from a military standpoint. You've got a sophisticated weaponry going to someone that the President of the United States won't even call an ally, and they're in cahoots with Hezbollah. They're direct meetings with Iran. This is an unbelievable situation.
They sided with Hamas
in the most recent Gaza conflict with Israel.
You know, and the other thing, I keep going back to this, we're giving it to them. You know, we have an actual ally named Taiwan, the nation of Taiwan, that has to pay us almost $2 billion to upgrade its 20-year-old fighters. We give the Muslim Brotherhood 20 brand spanking new F-16s.
By the way, these F-16s have a 500-mile mission range. To fly to Cairo to Jerusalem is 265 miles. Now think about that one, folks. Which, by the way, on an F-16, you're talking minutes. But this is the danger. And this is why you've got to speak out. We need you to go to your phones right now. Sign on to this petition. We've got to stop this right now. 877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or aclj.org. Who do we have next, Than?
Let's go to Georgianne calling from Colorado on line 1. Georgianne, you're on the air.
Hi, Georgianne.
Hi, Jay. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Regarding international law, can you tell me if Lockheed Martin can withdraw from their contracts without penalties?
I think it's way past the contract stage with Lockheed Martin. I don't think you can blame Lockheed Martin here. I mean, at the time that Lockheed Martin made the contracts were entered into, Egypt was our ally. That's just not the way the system works. I don't think Lockheed Martin can do anything. The aircraft, they're being delivered in January. The aircraft are done, David.
The contract is with the U.S. government, too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not with Egypt. The contract
is with the United States. We're giving them, though, understand, Georgianne, we're giving them this weaponry. I mean, that's part of what we're doing here is giving them the actual weaponry.
So America is buying the F-16s from Lockheed Martin. The United States is making sure they're meeting high-quality standards and then giving it to the Muslim Brotherhood.
All right, so Than, let's talk about timing here, what we have to do. We've heard from a lot of people today, thousands already. What do we have here? What's the next real move politically that we can do?
We go immediately to the United States and we go to the President of the United States. We go to them with these names. We go to them with the backing of these members of Congress who are calling on the President to suspend it, because if we are going to stop the delivery of these F-16s, Jay, it has to be the President that engages. So that is step number one, the President of the United States.
All right, 38,491 of you have signed up online already. That's 38,491. With phone calls alone today, we are approaching, if not exceeding, 39,000. We need to get to 40,000, certainly we will by the end of today. Than, who do we have next?
Let's go to Mark from Arizona on line 3. Mark, you're on the air.
Hi, Mark.
Hello, Jay. You guys briefly touched on this just a moment ago.
Okay.
I want to reiterate it. There is nothing stopping Russia and China from purchasing a couple of those F-16s or tanks from Egypt. And those countries are probably willing to sell those to Russia and China, and I don't care what the contracts say.
Well, I was going to say I wouldn't worry about the contract here, but let's talk about the practicalities of this, Skip. I'll ask David this as well about the ability, because I think Mark brings up a really good point, and that is you've got in a situation where Russia and China are getting very close to, and of course Iran as well, to Egypt. We got the Muslim Brotherhood-controlled government. How dangerous is it getting this weaponry once it gets to Egypt, and where does it go from there?
I don't think it's going to be all that difficult. Once it gets there, we don't account for it anymore. It becomes part of the military of Egypt, and what happens once it gets into Egypt is up to the Egyptian authorities. Although they've made commitments that this will not happen, it could happen very easily. All they need to do is load a tank or an aircraft onto a ship bound for Russia, goes up into the Black Sea, and it's already in Russia. It's very easy to do, and I think that could happen very easily.
Or, just inviting Russian and Chinese technical folks to the bases where the weapons are housed now and having free reign and looking at them. I mean, look, the word of the Muslim Brotherhood towards the United States or towards Israel is meaningless.
Right.
Absolutely. Already we have seen terrorist attacks against Israel from the Sinai when that never happened under Mubarak. When it was under control under Mubarak, we have had Israelis die because of attacks from Egyptian territory in the last 12 months. So what do? Here are some F-16s. When
we come back from the break in just a few minutes, I'm going to play two sound bites from you, one from the President of the United States and the one from Congressman Buchanan, because it really kind of sets up the dichotomy. But I'm going to save that for after the break, because I really want to get into this a bit. And we're going right back to the phones right now. Who do we have next, Than?
Let's go to Sherry from Oklahoma on line 2. Sherry, you're on the air.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi. Hi, I just wanted to comment on the situation. Any country that burns our flag is in no way an ally, and what he's doing, sending any finances or military equipment, is the same as handing a murderer the weapon to kill you with.
It's a great analysis. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Egypt right now is controlled by a regime that I would say is hostile to Western civilization. David, is that an overstatement? I think they are.
Oh, absolutely. And she raises a great point we hadn't even addressed yet. It's only a couple of months ago that the Muslim Brotherhood security stood aside, allowed our own embassy to be stormed, and the black flag of jihad to fly over our own embassy. Here are some F-16s.
All right, so... Which, I mean, I just can't even imagine we're even saying that. Every time I say, here's some F-16s, and by the way, we're going to throw in, to be nice, a couple of hundred tanks. Than, let's talk about who's on helping us here in Congress. Where's it coming from?
It's coming from across the board. Lindsey Graham, Rand Paul in the Senate leading the charge. Ileana Ross.
Okay, let's talk about the Senate side first. What do we have with Senator Rand Paul and Lindsey Graham?
Lindsey Graham specifically has legislation that would suspend this funding to Egypt until they can certify that it's in the best interest of the national security. So he's introduced that as an amendment. We've been behind that. I am sure he will do it again in the new Congress.
Okay, and what about on the House side?
Chairman Ileana Ross-Lehtinen, who is the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, she has offered much the same legislation. And then, Jay, this may be the key one. Kay Granger from Texas, she's the one that's holding that additional funding for Egypt that we've talked so much about. So she's been very much at the forefront over on the House side.
You know, it's interesting. You got to ask yourself, why are we not cutting off the funding now? Andrew McCarthy, again, good friend of ours, been on this broadcast many times, written a great book called The Grand Jihad, and was a prosecutor, a former assistant U.S. attorney in charge of the criminal division in New York, where he prosecuted the Blind Sheik in the first attempt to knock down the trade centers. I'm going to play this for you. It's number 2.
Why don't we cut off funding, Andrew? That's, I think, the big thing. Why doesn't the United States come in and cut off the funding?
Should cut off the funding. My sense is the reason they don't is they feel they'll have no leverage in the equation if they cut the funding off. And that's, again, because we're dealing with people who are enemies of the United States. The only way, I guess they think, that we have a prayer of getting them to do anything along the lines of what we'd like is if we continue to pay for it.
I mean, folks, this is just, Andrew McCarthy is exactly right. This is ridiculous. It's repulsive. We do not need to be giving the Muslim Brotherhood 200 tanks and 20 F-16s. You go to your phones right now and you sign on and stand with us as we try to stop this funding right now. 877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255. You can also go to aclj.org or 877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255.
It doesn't make sense. The U.S. is using taxpayer funds to put deadly weapons into the hands of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood, a radical Islamic group that controls the government there. There are new reports that the United States is spending more than $200 million of taxpayer dollars to send 20 F-16 fighter jets to Egypt, putting them into the hands of the radical Muslim Brotherhood. Another Sharia dictatorship on Israel's border, armed with American weapons, cannot be allowed to happen. Stand with the ACLJ. Demand President Obama suspend all aid to Egypt and the Muslim Brotherhood. Stop delivery of the F-16s. Cut it off until Congress can clarify that such aid will benefit the national security interests of the U.S. and Israel. Stop funding the terrorists. Call now. Add your name to our petition. And if you make a gift supporting the work of the ACLJ, your gift will be doubled through our matching challenge. Call now. 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or online, aclj.org.
Hey, I got to say thank you to our ACLJ friends and members around the country because, you know, it's rare. I mean, just think about the largest arena in your town, other than probably your college football town if you're in the University of Tennessee or some of the University of Georgia, the SEC schools where they have 100,000 people. We've had 38,515 of you sign up in 24 hours. When I add the phones to it, we're clearly over 40,000 signatures in a day to stop this funding. And folks, when we did this on the stuff with Russia and the internet, we did it on Monday of this week to get that nonsense where Russia, the Chinese, and Sudan were trying to get UN control of internet protocols. And we said, okay, that'll be a disaster, letting dictatorial regimes and the UN run the internet. We stopped it, not just us. I mean, there's a lot of people working on it, but you stopped it in a day. the Russians pulled that back. So we know when we speak out, things will happen again. This situation with giving 20 F-16s and 200 tanks is ridiculous. We want you to stand with us also as we approach 50,000 signatures, hopefully by tomorrow. 877-989-2255. I really want to go into the weekend with 100,000 signatures, folks. So aclj.org or 877-989-2255. Let's grab a phone call.
Next up is Carl calling from West Virginia on line 6. Carl, you're on the air.
Hi, Carl.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good.
I have a quick question, actually, too, but
sure.
I'm a Marine or former Marine or inactive duty Marine.
Thank you for your service.
My question is, who in Congress is even supporting this? That's number one. And then number two,
good question.
I haven't heard yet. Hang up after I ask this question. What does Israel say about this? I mean, I'm pretty sure they have an opinion.
Yeah.
Donating these aircraft to Egypt. I'm just curious to hear what you have to answer in terms of those two questions.
Well, Carl, great questions. Thanks for your service. You can go ahead and listen. I'm going to go right first on the congressional one. Than, are there people supporting this money, this weaponry going over?
Well, first of all, we need to explain that this agreement was passed in 2010. That was when Egypt was our ally, so it actually had quite a bit of support back then.
Oh, sure. Everybody gets that. I mean, everybody understands that in 2010, Mubarak was in control of the government. He was an ally of Israel, ally of the United States. He was trying to keep stability in the region. But now we're in 2012, about to be 2013, and it's a new ballgame. Are there Congress? I think what Carl's question is, then, are there people in Congress saying, oh, yeah, let's go ahead and give it to them? Let's give them the weaponry.
Not verbally, no. And
good.
If there are people that are that way, I don't think they're going to say that publicly. However, they have to back that up with action. That is why we are trying to get them to commit to defunding this in next year's budget now. Because if we don't do it now, Jay, they won't have the courage to do it when that budget comes up.
All right, let me play for you a speech from President Obama, his famous Cairo speech, and then we're going to play a comment from Congressman Vern Buchanan, who was just in the region. Let's play to President Obama first.
Islam has a proud tradition of tolerance. We see it in the history of Andalusia and Cordoba during the Inquisition. I saw it firsthand as a child in Indonesia, where devout Christians worshiped freely in an overwhelmingly Muslim country. That is the spirit we need today.
Yeah, well, let me tell you what we're getting. The spirit we're getting today, Mr. President, is this. We're getting Christians being beaten in the streets, churches burned, and the government doing nothing. In fact, the government in favor of all of this. So that's number one. Now, this tolerance you talk about, is this tolerance? Well, Congressman Vern Buchanan was just in the region. He was on Morning Joe discussing this the other day. Here's what he said.
Well, I was there about 9 months ago, and they're ousting the last dictator. And now with the new one, he's performing like a dictator. What he's done, he's working with Hamas. This new rule in terms of trying to overtake the Supreme Court and in terms of the Constitution. It's got a lot of people in the street. So I'm not sure why we want to continue to give money to people that aren't friendly to the U.S. and Israel, as a matter of fact.
All right, folks, that's why I need you to take direct action on this. We need to hear from 100,000 of you, and thousands of you have contacted us in the last 24 hours. ACLJ.org or 1-877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255 or ACLJ.org. And what about all that language where they want to revisit the treaty with Israel? Remember that? We're going to give them the weaponry so they can go ahead and attack Israel. 877-989-2255 or ACLJ.org. To sign on, let's grab another call.
Next up is Diane calling from New Jersey on line 1. Diane, you're on the air.
Hi, Diane.
Hi, how are you?
Great.
I have been thinking about calling for the longest time, but
well, we're glad you did today.
With every day, I read what's going on in this world and our country, and it scares me to death. I actually now have high blood pressure. Who used to always have perfect health. Something has to be done, and I think the majority of us realize that whoever is in the White House is not who he says he is, and there are people fighting who have given up their day jobs.
Yeah, well, let me tell you this. I mean, let me tell you who he is. This is who he is. Play the soundbite from the President of the United States being asked about Egypt. This is who the President is.
Would you consider the current Egyptian regime an ally of the United States?
I don't think that we would consider them an ally.
So if they're not an ally and he doesn't really want to call them an enemy, what are they? David?
What are they as a recipient of 20 brand new F-16s and 200 tanks?
Until we stop it, yes.
Exactly.
And they're the Muslim Brotherhood-led government.
Yes, exactly. I mean, this is a classic example of why people are so cynical about government.
Yeah.
Is there a world in which this makes sense, in which the idea that in a time of fiscal crisis we're going to give an organization dedicated to our destruction and to Israel's destruction advanced weaponry?
I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, Diane said she's getting high blood pressure. I want you to get a high blood pressure, Diane. And by the way, if you get high blood pressure, don't worry, Doc. If you're listening on Sirius XM, they got Dr. Radio. You can go there and get good advice. But don't get high blood pressure from this. Take action. You can relieve the tension by speaking out. Things stop when the American people speak out. Again, aclj.org or 877-989-2255. That's aclj.org or 877-989-2255. Skip, let me ask you this. We had the question come in about the tanks. We're on, this is on radio. We do have our television audience in here, so some of our folks will be seeing this on TV. But we'll get some of this up online right away also, so they'll get portions of this online. But Skip, explain to people the significance of 200 tanks and 20 F-16s as far as firepower goes.
Well, this is tremendous firepower. These are the top weapons in the U.S. arsenal, and now we're giving them to a questionable ally, quote unquote. We have a situation where the Muslim Brotherhood took over, and they tried to impose themselves and take over dictatorial powers. And now this is a country that's going to have the top firepower. It's a country that is run by the Muslim Brotherhood, which hates Israel and all that it stands for, hates the West and all that we stand for, and we are giving them the top-of-the-line weapons sooner or later to be used against Israel and to be used against us. So it's very significant, and to me, it's the function of a very naive, weak foreign policy on the part of the United States.
You're not kidding. Dangerous foreign policy. Let's go and get one more call here. Who do we have next, man?
Adrian from Texas is on line 2.
Hey,
Adrian, you're on the air.
very quickly, please.
Yes, sir. I just want to say that as a fellow American, I think America needs to open up their eyes and just start noticing that, we're about to give weapons to another country that, in their eyes, probably don't even have the same respect or courteousness to Americans. And what do we know?
No, they're calling for the elimination of Western civilization. The Muslim Brotherhood's charter is the elimination of Western civilization as we know it. So this tells you how dangerous the situation is. Here's what we're doing, folks. We've just got a few seconds left. I need everybody that's listening to the broadcast, go to aclj.org, sign that petition, which, by the way, is approaching 39,000. So, again, aclj.org at 38,743. We can get to 39,000. That'd be great. Or you call us right now at 877-989-2255. That's 877-989-2255. We're at 1,395 of you have called us in less than an hour. Tens of thousands who have gone to the internet. Let's get it over 1,400. Call right now at aclj.org or call us at 1-877-989-2255. That's aclj.org or 877-989-2255.
It doesn't make sense. The U.S. is using taxpayer funds to put deadly weapons into the hands of Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood, a radical Islamic group that controls the government there. There are new reports that the United States is spending more than $200 million of taxpayer dollars to send 20 F-16 fighter jets to Egypt, putting them into the hands of the radical Muslim Brotherhood. Another Sharia dictatorship on Israel's border, armed with American weapons, cannot be allowed to happen. Stand with the ACLJ. Demand President Obama suspend all aid to Egypt and the Muslim Brotherhood. Stop delivery of the F-16s. Cut it off until Congress can clarify that such aid will benefit the national security interests of the U.S. and Israel. Stop funding the terrorists. Call now. Add your name to our petition, and if you make a gift supporting the work of the ACLJ, your gift will be doubled through our matching challenge. Call now, 1-877-989-2255. That's 1-877-989-2255 or online, aclj.org.